Reasons for Hong Kong. What you need to understand it, why America's getting blamed for the riots. Well, it's probably very likely. Hong Kong was basically returned back to China, sort of, in 1997 under this agreement that guaranteed that Hong Kong would have this certain levels of autonomy and freedoms that wasn't there in the mainland China. This was called the One Country, Two System deal, and it was at the center stage between London and Beijing diplomats and their relations for centuries. Hong Kong was given to Britain in perpetuity, forced, stolen by China. It was taken from China, and this happened in the 1800s. And after a while, some negotiations happened. London and Beijing agreed to a deal that would see Hong Kong handed back to China. A joint declaration was signed by Margaret Thatcher and a guy whose name I'm probably not going to get right, Zhao Ziyang. And this happened in 1984. Under this, Hong Kong would return to China in 1997 and governed under this, as I said before, that one country, two system doctrine, and then it would have this special status for 50 years. So it becomes a state of China, but it has a special status for 50 years at 97. And as 97 came around, these plans were made in 84. But as 97 came around, the laws essentially remained basically unchanged. At that point, the locals would then be allowed to make up the city's leadership structure. It would also have independent trade, finance, and custom status. There would be a free flow of capital, unlike the Chinese mainland. And private property and foreign investments would have legal protection. So those last three things, catch those. Those are the important ones that I want to highlight because this is how the Eurodollar tax haven works. This is why Hong Kong, Singapore, New York, and of course London are the top financial centers currently. Tokyo is fifth from the top. I'm digressing, but it's up there because of the Eurodollar tax haven system. Its money was flowing from the USA to Japan. This happened when we occupied them after World War II. Most of Japanese districts were set up by this pay-to-play system that our dollar implemented. And this has happened after a lot of the bombed out places needed to get reset up. And other places that were essentially military manufacturing complexes, and America didn't want those around anymore either. So, why this is affecting Hong Kong right now is pretty easy to understand. The city of London, and I mean the little city inside the big city, for all you Americans and pretty much everyone else who has no idea what I'm talking about. And I didn't until like a year ago. This really should have been discussed sooner. The city of London does not want to let China have Hong Kong back because it's one of London's biggest tax havens. The second one, top one's New York. The protests began, the riots began with a plan, or when a plan was made to have, that would have allowed the extradition from Hong Kong to the mainland China before these 50 years came up. But now this giant violent protest has really spread to a wider list of demands for democratic reform. This is totally a cover. I mean, I'm certain a lot of the citizens want that, and they're definitely willing to fight for that, but what they're going to get is essentially America and London love being defenders of freedom when it suits them. I'm not certain if you learned that yet. But they've now... See, I've met plenty of Americans that really aren't much better off than iPhone slaves. The City of London has been gradually absorbing the wealth of the world for a few centuries now. You can go watch Spider's Web, A Britain's Second Empire, for the City of London and Euro dollar context. And if you really want to understand why there's this huge push by London to absorb all of the wealth of the world, you will have to understand where that quote comes from. I was just quoting someone. His name is Cecil Rhodes, and if you really want to know what I'm talking about, go look up James Corbett's A World War I Conspiracy. Have a great one.